More now on our top story, the international outpouring of grief and anger over the death of Rehtaeh Parsons. My next guest is the former chair of the Nova Scotia Task Force on Bullying and Cyberbullying. He's also the author of a report that made a number of recommendations. He is urging the province to do more. Joining me from Halifax is Wayne MacKay. Welcome to the program, Wayne.
Thanks for having me on, Suhanna.
When you heard about Rehtaeh's death, what went through, not your mind, but your heart?
Well, I guess my heart was sad, as everyone was, and thinking what a tragedy this is, that we have yet another young person who falls victim to bullying and a system that can't adequately respond to bullying and cyberbullying.
And I suppose what went through your mind might have been a little bit different from mine, because you come at it with a different perspective. You put 85 recommendations down on the table to the province. So what went through your mind when you heard about this death?
Well, you're right. I've been immersed in this, and one of my thoughts was, of the various recommendations that have not been implemented, could some of them have made a difference? And I think there are some that could, on a range of things, which I can talk about if you want. But I guess having done that research and recognizing that things can be done that would make the situation better, it's really frustrating and angering to some extent that more has not been done. So
can you point the finger then, if you're frustrated, if you're angry? And I'm feeling those emotions as well.
Well, I mean, there's lots of potential culprits around. As a society, we've failed these kind of situations, but I guess the two most obvious in this case are the justice system and the education system. I'm not saying they're the only ones, but both of those. And the justice system, obviously in all of this, I don't have all the facts and all the information, but it seems to me that surely something, even if it's not laying a charge, something could have been done to send a clear message that obviously the alleged assault and the cyberbullying and sending of pictures was not acceptable. And in relation to education, again, not all the evidence is there, but it looks like the school boards did very little, particularly at the first school in Cola Harbour, and that their basis, at least from what I've heard for that, is in my view based on erroneous interpretations of their jurisdiction. And I think that's one of the things I find really frustrating, is that people who should be accountable and responsible for the safety and welfare of our children aren't taking adequate steps to carry out that mandate.
Was that part of your recommendation?
Absolutely. In fact, there's a whole section on accountability, which has not been fully followed for sure. There's a section on school board jurisdiction specifically saying that jurisdiction extends off premises and after hours, so long as there's a negative impact back on the schools, which was exactly this case with students, and that recommendation has not been added. My view, and I do a lot of work in education law, that's currently the law. But what I wanted was to make it absolutely clear by putting it in the legislation, as Ontario has, that that's the status, and that's one of the bases. The other basis was that they said because there's a criminal investigation, we can't proceed with internal discipline, and that's simply legally wrong, in my opinion. So that's one. I
just want to hold you there, Wayne,
sure,
because a lot of people who are sending in notes, et cetera, say things should change. You know, there has to be something that changes so that this doesn't happen again. You're in a position where you have tried to affect change. Are you still trying to do that? Are you calling the minister? Are you calling the school boards? I'm wondering if there's a certain sense of accountability that you, as someone who wrote this report, can also take.
Well, absolutely, and I'm sure, like all of us, I haven't discharged that perfectly, but I've been very active, I'm sure, to the chagrin of the government in challenging them when I feel they should have gone further. I have many interviews, not just in cases like this. I have about probably 30 conferences and presentations in the next couple of weeks to a month. Yes, I've been very active, and I've become a kind of advocate on behalf of victims, I think, in part, and parents. This is such a serious thing. Doing the task force was a very moving experience, and it's far too important to let those measures and recommendations sit there and have inadequate action. So, no, I think I've been pretty active and taken a fair bit of accountability on that.
And why was it a moving experience?
Well, the stories like this, I mean, a couple of tragic suicides were among the precipitating factors in the Nova Scotia Task Force. And again, courageous parents like Pam Murchison in our case, as the parent is here, Ms. Parsons, and also just hearing how bad it is. And I think that is what the whole world is discovering here, that we shouldn't really underestimate how cruel and nasty students can be, or children, or anybody, but I'm focusing on youth, can be to one another, and how powerful the social media and the technology is to make that extremely hurtful. And so that's a lot of it, I guess.
One final question for you, Wayne.
Yes.
And you've dealt with politicians, you've dealt with trustees, I bet, and superintendents. In your heart of hearts, do you think anyone will wear this? Do you think there will be change?
Well, that's a really good question. I hope so, and actually I'm a bit optimistic. There's been such a groundswell of support for the victim and outcry against inadequate response that I hope they will. And I think it can go all the way from potential negligence actions in terms of the school board. I don't have all the facts, but if inadequate steps were taken, maybe it's sometimes you need that kind of a wake up. I hope that the government will now act on more of the recommendations in my report, which, as you say, have 85, including digital citizenship, prevention programs, more counselors. So I'm hopeful that the good that might come out of this, and I thank the courageous family of Ms. Parsons for this, will be that maybe at last it's time for action.
I'm hopeful too. Wayne, I thank you for your time.
No problem. Thanks for your interest.
Wayne MacKay, the former chair of the Nova Scotia Task Force on Bullying and Cyberbullying, joining me from Halifax.